Hi, it's Jake. I am back, otherwise known as the Angry Centrist. But right now I'm a little angry, and that's why the camera's on, because I'm sick and fucking tired of hearing about hate speech. Hate speech is not real. It's not a thing. And by not a thing, I mean legally recognized not a thing. Hateful speech, or something that can be determined as hateful, is protected by the First Amendment. Get that through your heads. You don't get to call a hate speech foul and end the discussion. You don't win the debate when you say hate speech. It's not a thing. And you know what? There's a reason for that. That's not just an oversight. It's not something we can look at now and go, oh man, we never wrote the hate speech legislation, because the forefathers wanted you to be able to speak out against the establishment. At the time when they wrote it, they wanted you to be able to speak out against the monarchy and King George. And they said, you know what? King George might be across the ocean and go, hey, that's hate speech. Jail him, right? And they're like, fuck that. We're America. We're going to do this ourselves. And they said, you know what? We don't want somebody determining what we're saying as hateful and then punishing us and silencing us. So that was by design. So the reason you don't get to call a hate speech foul is because this is America, okay? We want you to be able to have freedom of speech. And if you say something that's offensive, if you say something that somebody determines somewhere is hateful, we say, go ahead. We'll protect you. The KKK is allowed to assemble in this country and have a parade down the street saying hateful shit from Main Street to the next street, and we have to sit there and allow it. Okay? You don't get to silence them. That's not how America is. The whole point of this is, you know what? All speech is protected. That's what makes this beautiful. We're not the UK where you get jailed for a Facebook post. I don't want to end up like that. None of us do. Okay? Well, maybe some of us do. But anyone that's a red-blooded American, anyone that's an adult that's developed with a fucking backbone, doesn't want anyone to go to jail for a Facebook post, for saying something that might be deemed hateful, or having a thought that is counter to the establishment, because America, if you really want to get down to it, is not a country that really likes the establishment. We are ingrained from birth, or at least we used to be. I don't know what happened, but we used to be taught from childhood that this was a maverick country. This was a country that liked the outlaw. This was a country that said, you stand up, you do what's right. It doesn't matter if everybody comes out and tries to take you down. You stand for what you believe is right. Those are our heroes. And then somewhere along the way, I don't know what happened, we've lost complete sight of that. It's permeating into our culture. It's permeating into the real world. It's actually being discussed in the Supreme Court at times. And we're determining whether or not it should be legislated. And we're actually talking about things that are so anti-American, and we're doing it with a straight face, and nobody, aside from me right now, and maybe some people you've never heard of, is sitting there going, what the fuck, dude? What do you mean is hate speech protected? Yes, it is, and it will always be, as long as this is America, because it's supposed to be. You don't get to tell me, or anybody, that because you're uncomfortable, because you're such a fucking pussy, because you're so weak that speech offends you, that you're able to tell somebody to shut up. You don't get to do that here. If you're so offended, then fucking go back and take some notes and break down the counter argument and argue it step by step like an intelligent, developed adult. You don't get to just go hate speech, go away. That's how children think, okay? Of course you can't give people that are not developed enough, that don't understand nuance, that don't understand context, that don't have the ability to even think like an artist or comedian. Just these unfunny, fucked up people that just really want to regulate the rest of us because they're so fucking afraid. They're so fucking afraid, and I don't know why. I'm not fucking gonna do a Freudian shit on them, but I can tell you that they're fucking afraid. You're gonna tell them, you know what? You determine if this is okay. Am I allowed to say that, Mr. Fucked Up Crazy Person? Is this okay? Does this pass your test? And then crazy person goes, nope, that's not acceptable. Nope, that's not allowed. Yes, you can say that, but only about white people. In the old days, when you said hate, everybody understood what you meant by hate. We didn't have to sit there with judging cards and go, hey, is that hate? Does that register as hate? If it's hate, if it's truly hate, you know. You don't have to go back later and determine whether or not it's hate. And also, if you're at the point where you're saying, oh, well, you know, maybe things are hate speech now that weren't 20 years ago. It was a different time when people were racist. They used to say this stuff, but now you can't. So what you're saying is the words and definition have changed, and with the times we've evolved, and now we understand that's hate. Okay, you know what? I'll give you that. Well, then what's to say they won't change again? What's to say something now that you think is totally fine to say, you, the crazy people that are determining hate speech, that 20 years from now, something you're saying isn't hate speech? When we've in our history been at this point where we are now, where we're using fear tactics to silence the opposition or to imprison the opposition, we've always been shocked by it in America. We talk about the gulags or the Salem witch trials or McCarthyism. At these moments of mass hysteria, we look at and we go, that's terrifying. Can you believe at some point there was this dysfunctional group that was so afraid of something that innocent people had to pay the price and be labeled something they weren't, because this group was a loud minority with unchecked power. They were drunken with power. And we look at it and we're terrified. And for some reason now, today, it's happening again, and nobody's terrified. Stop for a second. Stop fighting. Stop arguing online. Stop fighting with your family at Thanksgiving over politics. Put it all aside for a second. Everyone look each other in the eyes. We have lost our way. We are wrong, and you all know it, and it's okay. It's okay to admit that you're scared. It's okay to admit that we fucked up, because that's happened in our history, and it will happen again. And eventually there comes a time when we together collectively say, whoa, we are fucked up, bro. Let's stop it. It's not 5 years from now where we're all going to go, holy shit, how did it get here? We're there now. It's bad now. And we can't let it get worse, because people are going to start going to jail for Facebook posts. And if you just read one history book, you don't have to read a bunch, you'll see that humans have this really scary slippery slope where they sit there, and when they're afraid, when humans are afraid and they see somebody as the enemy and they start labeling them and classifying them as an enemy, it never ends well. In fact, there's always a point when you go back and look and you go, how the hell did nobody see this coming? Why didn't anyone stand up and go, hey, this is crazy? You know what? Let you in a little secret. They did. A lot of people did. And you know what happened to them? They were jailed for saying hateful things. They were silenced for standing up to it. In America, when we came here and we found our nation, our forefathers were smart enough and they had enough historical education to go, you know what? The most dangerous thing that can happen to a nation is when we start telling people to be silent. And they said, you know what? Anytime anybody stands up and says something that is counter, they should be heard. And if they're not heard, they certainly shouldn't be silenced, because they understood that once you silence dissent, once you start punishing people for saying things that is counter to the movement of the time, that it goes really dark, really fast. In the past, we've always dehumanized the opposition. We've labeled them gypsy, Juden, communist, witch. But we don't really do that anymore, do we? Because we're so evolved now. Antifa, libtard, alt-right, white nationalist.